badge on. You are an officer of the law. I don't care your race, your color, or your creed. Your job is to protect and serve. Sorry, like you are held to a higher standard. I don't care what color you are. He killed a 17-year-old naked boy. He deserves to pay. Demand number 2, we want immediate review and audit of the Austin Police Department's policy manual number 445, mental health response by the City of Austin, the U.S. Department of Justice, and independent investigators. I'm not here to tell you that David Joseph had a mental problem, but we knew something was wrong. And that's where Officer Freeman is guilty. He didn't take the extra time out to assess that situation properly. That's why it's a family, North Austin, in sorrow because their son is no longer here. Demand number 3, we want an immediate review and audit of the use of force policy by the Department of Justice and independent investigators. And our last demand, number 4, we further demand that members of the Austin Justice Coalition and the community at large are invited to actively participate in the selection of the outside independent investigator. Implement these common sense responses to the horrendous murder of a child at the hands of a public servant. As a collective, we seek justice. If these are not met, the coalition will convene and protest at City Hall each week. And last but not least, this coalition of people that came up with these ideas and more, they include the Austin Justice Coalition, Black Lives Matter, Austin Local Organizing Committee, Measure Austin, the NAACP, and it's a bunch of organizations because as a millennial, I'm telling you, like, I'm tired. We should not be having these conversations. It's a lot of people in my room that you're older than me. You dropped the ball, and now here I am in 2016 picking up the slack. At some point, we have to be real with ourselves as this, liberal Austin, the land of milk and honey of America, and get to work. So thank you for your time.
Let me react to that real quick. First of all, when I said we got some special people in the city, young people, what they didn't talk about is that they have been looking at policy, they have been looking at procedures, they have been working with us, they've gone through our use of force training, took time out of their lives to learn and educate themselves. And I want to commend Nelson for being a leader because, you and I are getting that young to really train that next generation. I want to just react to a couple things. Number one, I understand the emotion of wanting an independent investigation, but I think that there's only 2 people in the city under law that can, that can order that, and that's the police chief and the city manager. I guarantee you that we will be conducting a thorough, complete, impartial investigation. Listen, it is a tough set of circumstances that are known to this public that a completely nude 17-year-old young man is dead. And there are a lot of tough questions. And I'm not here today to condemn my police officer because I haven't had the opportunity to finish the investigation, but there are some tough questions that he needs to answer. And wherever those answers and wherever that investigation takes us, my commitment to this group, we're working together today, but we're going to have times where we're going to be loving each other, we're going to have times we're going to be hating each other. Sometimes my cops love you, sometimes my cops hate me. But my job is to not look at which way the wind's blowing in terms of sentiment, in terms of emotion. My job is to look at the law, policy, procedure, and training. And so in terms of independent investigations, I just think it's premature when we haven't finished ours to ask for that. So, I understand where that's coming from, but this is it's pretty fast track because of the scope of the work and the excellence of the Special Investigations Unit, Internal Affairs Division, that are obviously working with the District Attorney's Office and the Office of Police Monitor. We have pretty quick. Normally it's 45 days, and we think we can get it in 30. So I would just say, please be patient. Patience is really important. We are a nation of laws, and it's important as guardians of the laws, police officers, guardians of the peace, as the police department, it's important for us to make sure that we follow the law. And the law requires us to follow certain procedures, certain processes, and that's what we're going to do. In terms of the review of the policies, they've already been reviewed by the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice, I'd be willing to send them myself and say, hey, can you guys take a look at this? Is there anything that we're missing? But it's important. At the end of the day, we are dealing with human beings. And no matter where this investigation takes us, no matter who your chief is, no matter what city you're in, we are human beings as police officers. But we're held to a high standard. This community spends a lot of time and wealth training, equipping and training some of the best police officers in the country, and we hold our people to high standard. We will get this done. We will report back. We will be transparent as much as the law allows us to. I've heard some folks that they want the videotape released. Well, you know, let me just say this, and we talked about it. My number one responsibility, our department's number one responsibility is to the Joseph family and to Officer Freeman and his family. For the truth and the facts that come out wherever they end up taking us. And you can fire me, you can get a new police chief, but I am not going to waver from my responsibility to those two families. That regardless of right and wrong, it is a tragedy, and a greater tragedy, obviously, for the Joseph family. So we will look at this, and we have other work that we're going to be working on. So with that, I want to just say thank you for being here, and we will open up to questions, understanding this is a very fluid investigation. You know, and I mean, Kenya said it best. You know, Black Lives Matter. When Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, because it isn't an either/or proposition, ladies and gentlemen. It's all, every life matters. It really does. You said it so eloquently. I could never say it about that more powerfully. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Chief, going back to the
force did Officer Freeman have on him?
Our police officers are equipped with, our patrol officers are equipped with several items. Number one, and this is by policy, again, approved by the Department of Justice, under Sam Brown Belt, our patrol officers must have a taser. Officers that are working patrol must have a taser, must have an impact weapon on their person. So many officers elect to carry an ASP, which is a collapsible side baton, and they must have a pepper spray on their person. Those are the three items. And the last less lethal force that they have available to them is hands-on. It's their personal weapons, which is your hands and your feet. So those are the ones that are required, are the ones I described, and obviously hands-on and physical control is a punch or whatever, is a weapon that can be used for self-defense. The officers must also have, if they're not carrying, if they carry an ASP on their belt, they must have their PR-24, which is their side handle baton, readily available with them in the police car in case we have to go to you know, some type of crowd management or soldier.
Did he have all that on him?
Yes.
Chief, going back to the timeline.
Can you tell us, if you could clarify, did David Joseph charge Officer Freeman? First question. Second is, why didn't he taser him?
Officer Freeman was charged by David Joseph. That is on videotape, clearly on videotape. And why didn't he tase him is part of the investigation. I think we're all asking that. Our police officers are asking me that. And that's part of the investigation. I wish I could answer that right this moment. But again, we have to remember that there's 143 of the code here in the state that we have to follow. And there's a contract we have to follow. We have to follow certain processes. That's part of the investigation.
Chief, going back to the timeline you were talking about, you said other officers were called. Did that include a mental health unit or anything like that?
I don't have that information yet, but that's part of the investigation. We do have, if you looked at that timeline, remember at first we didn't have any indication until very, very, very late in this incident that we were dealing with somebody that was in an altered state of mind. Now, whether that's drug-induced, mental health, we don't know, but that was very, very late in this set of events. Had a call come in initially that we have a nude individual in North Austin, that would be an indicator to us as a police department that we are dealing with somebody that is either having a psychological emergency or is it having a drug-induced emergency, or a combination of all. And we have a very well-defined response protocol that when the resources are available, we send 4 officers, a supervisor, a mental health officer. It's important for this community to know that every one of our officers receives 40 hours, and anybody can correct me, 40 hours, a full week on dealing with mental health, which is significant. And we have many other officers around the city that have additional training, and we have a CIT unit that actually does an outstanding job of working with non-government partners and other government partners in actually doing long-term follow-up and management of known cases of people that are having mental health issues in our community. That's that answer. Anything else?
Chief, if the pharmacology report takes 40 days, how can you get the investigation done in 30 days?
Well, listen, folks, the toxicology may explain the behavior of David Joseph, that, you know, from what I'm hearing from people that know the family, that was a little unusual for him to end up in that. That explains his behavior, but that toxicology probably will not have an impact in terms of our assessment of, under the circumstances that we've uncovered so far, in terms of our assessment as a police department on the use of force, based on what we know so far. And in speaking with the medical examiner, he is going to make that a priority. So we're hopeful that he'll be able to get it done in 30 calendar days.
Has Officer Freeman undergone any sort of assessment or type of counseling after the fact?
Officer Freeman, consistent with our protocols, has been contacted and been our peer support team and all of our resources, including the Austin Police Association, are with him. But let me just say this about Officer Freeman, I think it's really important. We're dealing with human beings. No matter what the outcome is, we don't need to demonize people. Things happen very quickly, but no matter where we end up in this case, because mistakes happen, whether they end up being criminal or whatever, we don't need to demonize people. We just need to report the facts and the findings. And I can tell you that it's not easy when you take a life, justified or not. And in this case, we will make that determination in the next 30 calendar days.
Is Officer Freeman ever disciplined for anything? He's been with APD, what, 10, 12 years?
My initial assessment of his records are that he has not been a problematic officer.
Has he ever been disciplined for anything though?
Not that I know of, but that'll be part of the internal affairs investigation. When our folks have an internal affairs investigation, one of the things that they include in there for me as the person they're writing the report for is a history on the officer. So I know what their history is, and that will be part of the internal affairs investigation.
Has the family or witnesses said anything about a mental health history on David Joseph?
I don't know, and I'm not going to speak to that. And, just know that, listen, there's plenty of time to discuss what happened to David Joseph in terms of his behavior. Our primary focus as a police department is this. And this is we're zeroing on this focus. We have a young man that's been killed. And my only concern right now is, were we justified? I don't care if he was, committed 20 times. My focus is what happened in the space of a matter of seconds between David Joseph and Officer Freeman. That's what matters most to me. Now, the other issues are important because we need to do everything. We have a responsibility as a community to help other folks. We know we have mental health issues. Aside of things, we don't know. But we have a lot of veterans in this city. We're talking about that today. So those lessons learned have to do with what we can do as a community, as a police department. But our primary focus is, was the use of force, deadly force, and the taking of a human life objectively reasonable? And that's the answer that we seek. And that we will not leave any stone unturned to provide that answer to all stakeholders.